Now, implicit when I look at the logic of it, from for example, as we were talking, perhaps what the European Commission may have been thinking, or what they may be thinking, and what some of the promoters push, there seems to be somehow the underlying assumption that low tax or some special tax regime would indeed be sufficient to attract those high net worth individuals. And I think of that, the conference you and I attended, and we're not promoting any one particular entity over the others, but it just so happens in Henley and Partners, they're pretty dominant in this space, and they publish a ranking which gets a lot of publicity and so forth. So you got to help but pay attention to what they're doing. And when they published earlier this year their ranking of the cities in the world with the highest number of high net worth, as they've defined it, individuals, they're not necessarily low tax cities, right? You would have expected, oh, well, maybe Dubai is at the top, or some other zero tax place. But in the US, it's LA and New York and Chicago, and those two coastal cities are
really high tax cities.
Are the highest tax states in the entire
union. It's not Florida. Yeah.
It's not Florida. So exactly. And there was this other academic that I've been reading. He was at Cornell, but I think he's at Stanford now, Cristobal Young, and he's took anonymized tax data from the Internal Revenue Service, and he is showing clearly that people do not move for tax reasons. And, and there was someone else was referencing a billionaire, a guy called Chamath Palihapitiya. He's right.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, you know who he is, and he was also making the point. You know what? Tax, just ignore that. It's a non-factor in your decision, because when you move to a particular city or a particular state or jurisdiction, you do that with so many non-tax factors in mind. What are the capital markets like? What is the ecosystem? What is the networking like? And things like that. Who can factors that, because when you're playing with your wealth, you can try to increase revenue, or you're trying to reduce costs, and the highest cost for many business owners, investors, will be tax. So I get that, but there's only so much you can do with tax. Whereas if you focus on revenue, it's infinite, right? If you can scale your business, if you get it in the right ecosystem, that's amazing. So to me, it seems to be misplaced even to just focus so much on taxation as this key factor in, allowing how many high net worth people to move from point A to point B, point A to point B. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Darren, I totally agree, and I have one case in my practice, which was really illuminating, because this was a 70-year-old client, already retired, from Germany, having an operating business in Germany, married, and there was this plan by a very well-known firm, which basically wanted to solve his inheritance tax issue by having this gentleman move out of Germany. But there were so many complications due to German tax law that he could not basically move from the country where he was living, from Germany, directly to Singapore. But he had to basically spend a 7-year period outside of Germany, but in an EU country. So the plan was for this 70-year-old guy to move for 7 years to Austria, stay there, not die in these 7 years. So he must be on life support until the end of the 7th year, and then to move to Singapore, which is very different climatically from Germany. Germany, Austria is very close. Yeah? So it is a similar culture, similar climate, a similar food, similar lifestyle. And Singapore, on the other hand, is like, it's humid. It is very fast moving. It's not like a German city. Yeah? It's a totally different lifestyle. So I thought, when I read that all of this makes really sense from a tax planning perspective, and we're really proud as tax practitioners to come up with something that shows so much genius. It's just incredible, the sweat that went into this paper. All these associates who've been working day and night to come up with this fantastic tax optimized solution. But at the end of the day, I thought, he's never going to do that. And exactly that happened. His wife said, no way, I'm not going to move twice, and certainly not to Singapore. Even if it's the best, even if we did this super rigid analysis and came up with all the possibilities and vetted them and so on. So tax is not the most important factor, because people really, they have a life, and they want to have, the most important thing is, of course, your relations. Yeah. If you move, that already is a problem. You will be cut off from your friends, from your family. All of your activities that you carry out will be somehow impaired. And if you then move to a different country with a very different culture, even if it's like fantastic from a tax perspective, Dubai, no income tax yet, you really have to weigh that. So So I think also that you said people going to LA or to New York, like these beacons of high taxes in the US. So the thing is that just it is not always the case that if you move to a high tax jurisdiction, that it means that you're going to pay a high amount of tax. You can do a bit of pre-immigration planning. You might you might shelter income into a structure which is non-transparent, not looked through, and then do not pay out anything while you're there. So they're always, same is true for Austria. It's basically not like the super efficient jurisdictions, not Dubai or Singapore, or I don't know, some other country with a special regime. But there are some things you can do. And if people, call us on time and not like I'm coming here tomorrow, then we can fix things. Then we can sort of set things up. We might incorporate a Liechtenstein foundation for the client to put in his income generating assets, I don't know, his portfolio, whatever, and sort of shelter that. Yeah? There will be no income tax consequences for him while he's living in Austria. We might take a look at should he move out again. We'll try to reduce the impact of exit taxation. We have a few benefits. We have no inheritance tax, for example, no gift tax. That is cool. And for the income tax, because we have high rates, but you can also structure things sometimes. And so high tax country is not automatically high tax bill. It really depends sometimes on your advisor, what he can come up with.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And I guess those promoters who focus on, investment migration, obviously to a guy with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So for them, the solution is just always to move. Whereas you're right, what you and I do with, tax optimization, wealth protection, there's so many angles or opportunities from a planning perspective if things are done well in advance to, probably not get to zero, but, to be more efficient than whatever the headline rate is. So yeah, they're different angles, right?
So if you're a 6, 7, or 8-figure investor, entrepreneur, or business owner who needs a tailor-made solution from a qualified team of professionals, we can help you achieve the international lifestyle, the freedom, and even the tax savings you're looking for. Visit us at htj.tax and live that international life.